Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us tonight to this webinar, Say Yes to the CO2 Act with Daniel Heusser. We have our first poll, and just kind of to know who is around and what you know how many degrees colder was it all around the world during the Ice Age 20,000 years ago? And share with you the results. And then I will take this opportunity to introduce to you Daniel Heusser, who's going to tell us who actually answered correctly. I am myself very curious about it because I do not know. So Danny, he's the head of communities and projects for nature in German Switzerland, but also in the Italian part of Switzerland. And he's also responsible for the cantonal energy policy at WWF Switzerland, and so also the member of the management team for the campaign on the new CO2 law. So he's our expert in this matter. And having said that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Danny, the floor is yours. You can let us know which was the right question. The right answer, sorry, and also start presenting. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. A very warm hello to everyone who joined us tonight. From my part, first of all, unfortunately, I'm not very used to speaking in English, so maybe all my friends here will help me just to find the right words when I'm looking to them. Well, the question was how many degrees colder was it all around the world? We are talking about the Ice Age. So people coming around Zug and Zurich, that means that there were more than 100, 200, 300 meters of ice above you. And well, we all know the Ice Age movies, and everything was under ice. And it's really astonishing that it was only 3 to 5 degrees colder on Earth. And well, that's the topic to begin my speech, where I will introduce you to this CO2 Act, so the Carbon Dioxide Act. When we are talking about that Earth should not become warmer than 1 or 2 degrees, so it means that humankind will avoid to get in a catastrophic scenario and just keep a very, very bad scenario. So humankind yet missed the opportunity just to not go into a difficult area for all generations coming after us, but is hoping to manage, at least to manage the problems that will arise. Because also 1 or 2 degrees warmer than today globally, and we are talking of globally warming, is will be a very, very difficult moment. Remembering that 3 or 5 degrees, this was the Ice Age. Many people are talking to me and saying, oh, well, in the past, there were also 10 or 20 years of a very, very warm period. And it's known that 2000 years ago, also in Rome and Italy and all Europe, it was very, very warm for more than 10 years, not only for 1 or 2. Yes, but at the same time in Australia, it was colder than normal. And this is the very first time in history that the global warming as word, global warming, is real. That means that all over the whole world, we see an increasing of temperature. That's the first time, and that's the issue. So that's why all the countries need a carbon dioxide reduction. And I will share my presentation. Super. Okay, so now I have the task, the impossible task, to explain you a very complex Act, a very complex law that's coming in Switzerland, and it took more than 3 years to be to come on this stage in a few minutes. So let's start with 4 topics, and after each topic I will ask you if there are any questions. Otherwise maybe it could be too much information. Okay, perfect. So I will talk about the CO2 emissions in Switzerland and our targets, then how to read the CO2 Act, then just mention some social questions, and finish also with some economy and innovation questions. So first of all, so what is this new law all about? So let's have a look to the current CO2 law that we are in now. And it said that by 2020, the Swiss greenhouse gas emissions must be reduced by 20%. And we have not reached this objective. We are now about 15%. So this was the aim. And it has no consequences, as in all the other countries. It's always the same, no consequences when we do not reach our objectives. Okay, now for this, by 2020, now we are in 2021. So for this year, 2021, there were just for this year, they have they've discussed how to go to 21 until the law was finished. And what it's super important that without a new CO2 Act, so Switzerland will no longer have any binding target how much CO2 emissions they want to reduce, because the actual law talked only until 2020. So the new law goes far until 2030. Then we will have the same problem as now. The law will finish. And it's saying that the greenhouse gas emissions have to be reduced of 50%, always compared with the emissions we had in 1919. And this means that now between 21 and 30, so we have to reduce 35% compared with 1990 here in Switzerland. And it tells also that this was not the case in the old law, that 3/4 of this greenhouse gas, we have to reduce it in our land, in our country, and we cannot just reduce it with certificate reducing CO2 emissions in other countries. Okay, and it means something more. This new law says that the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions abroad that are not taken into this account, that are not directly in our country, when we calculate this target, we had a look only of the emissions in our country, but we indirectly, we cause a lot of greenhouse gases importing stuff or exporting stuff, and also this greenhouse gas emissions that we cause out of Switzerland has to be reduced. So the law has the new law has some really good and interesting new points. So what here I wanted just to show, this is some slides, they're all in Italian because I took them from my speech here in Italian. But just look at that the half of the greenhouse emissions is caused from the transports. So this is the cars, the trucks, and the aircraft. All these two together is the half. If you take only the greenhouse emission, it would be less than the half. So you will see a lot of slides where it's not the half of that, because the airplanes are they are in an altitude that the greenhouse gases effect is 3 times more than if the same amount of greenhouse gases would be emitted here at the bottom. And in this graph, we had we made 3 times the effect of the greenhouse gases, because this is effectively known. So the effect of the greenhouse gases is the half, not the emissions. And on the right side, just this graphic shows you the greenhouse gas emissions in Switzerland from 1919 until to 2018. So this is the degrees, yes, not increase, the opposite. So of this 15% that we reached. So just take a look of the emissions by sector. Why that? Because in this law, we have a fee that is paid from when you use and you burn fossil fuels. So a fee, you have to pay that. And with this fee, something will happen. So I will go there. What happens with the money we get with the fee of the CO2 fossil fuels? But here I want just to show that we know such mechanisms in buildings and in industry. And you see both the greenhouse gases emitted are going down. We do not know such mechanisms to pay some fee on the fossil fuels on transport in Switzerland, cars, trucks, and we don't have it on the aircraft at all. And what you see is that it is increasing or not decreasing or increasing a lot in the aircraft. So just this to make the point that asking people to pay something just has an effect always, even if the amount that we ask is very, very little. This is things that are going in our head. So now to our aims that we have in Switzerland. Okay. The climate action plan, you will see that in Switzerland, there are a lot of different objectives when the Switzerland has to be fossil free, so netto zero. And the climate action plan says in 2030. And I think this is the most real scenario where we really should go if we want to avoid a catastrophe. The master plan, where our WWF is also an author, says at least 2040. The agreement, the Paris Agreement, says 2050. So you see that 2050 is yet a compromise, just looking for a solution where everybody can say yes. And what you see in red, this is the law, the new law on CO2 from Switzerland. It even is less than the Paris Agreement. So this means if we are going with the law of Switzerland, it's not enough for the agreement we signed. One of the things that in Swiss people always say is Switzerland is very, very little. So there is no, if we do something or not, they will have no effect. So this is absolutely wrong, because we are importing a lot of stuff. First of thing, we have, and the other thing is, if you think like that, so don't pay taxes anymore, because it's no different if one person pays or do not paying the taxes for a country. And we are not alone. That's one of the arguments that is very, very, you can see what Scotland, Denmark, Sweden, Germany, Netherlands, what they have for objectives, how much greenhouse gases they want to reduce in the same time. So until 2030 or 2032, it depends on the law of this country. It's that much more that Switzerland would have as objective if they say yes to the law, where all the people are invited to vote the 13th June. We have only 37 5%. So this was a little, in a nutshell, what the CO2 emissions in Switzerland are since '99 and what the targets we have. Do you have questions for this part?
Well, there are two questions here been asked in the chat, Danny, and if someone else wants to also maybe ask something directly, I remind you to just put your hand out and then we'll put you on the spotlight. So from Senthil, do we also consider greenhouse gas emissions from cattle industry?
Yes, they are calculated in. This is in this graphic. Well, I showed that the half is from the transport. A big part is from agriculture. Okay, so this in this graphic, we have here agriculture.
I see.
Okay. The blue one, and this it's calculated in. Yeah.
I see. Perfect. And the other question is: do we also? I'm sorry. Are carbon sequestration, for example, reforestation projects considered in the calculation of CO2 emissions as offsetting factors when that happens within Switzerland, I assume?
Yes, absolutely. They are. Just looking very precise on this slide here, you will see that at the end of 2050, when we want to reach the Paris Agreement, we are about at 10 tons of CO2, and we are not at 0. Because here we are talking only about the emissions. And the idea is that this sequestration will have the same amount, about 11 tons. So we have netto 0, and netto 0 means we will sequestrate each year the same amount. We will continue to emit because it will not be possible to have no emissions at all.
Okay, perfect. And there is a third question, if there is still time, Danny. How are the CO2 emissions measured? Do we ask the companies to report this per year? Like, do they do that voluntarily, or?
Oh, I'm sorry, I do not know that.
Okay.
I don't know that, but I think that is measured only about the fossil fuels that are bought and paid. You know exactly how much fossil fuels you pay in your bill at the end of the years. That's your energy. How do you say Buchhaltung? Just
accounting of CO2.
Genau. In your accounting of your firm, you have always also the costs of energy. And therein you see exactly the food, and this will be taken from everyone to make, And we know also exactly how much fossil fuel we do importing in Switzerland, from Shell, from BP, from Egypt, from Swiss oil, that we know exactly how much we are importing for 8 or 9 billion francs each year.
Wow, okay. Thank you. Well, I think those are all the questions for the moment. So please go ahead.
Okay, so reading the CO2 Act. Well, I will just mention some topics. One of the, I think, very important topics is how much will this cost and who shall this pay? So it will cost. Now we have 60 francs each ton of CO2 when we are heating. For our heating systems in the house, how do you say the Heizöl, the heating, the fossil? So when you buy heating oil, you will pay heating oil, and in this bill, 96 francs each ton is a fee to a climate fund. That's today. And the maximum today is allowed to ask is 120. So we are not at the maximum that we could ask. But in the future, with the law, the maximum it will be reached only when we have 210 francs each ton of CO2. So who will pay that? The person that buys the heating oil. So then I will come back to that, to the costs. Then these are the news for the building sector. So heating oil will become more expensive. Second, new buildings cannot have heating oil anymore. They can if they want, but they do not have. They have to have 0 kilogram of CO2 to heat each quadrat meter. Square meter in a year. And if you have an old building and you are just replacing the heating system, then it's allowed to have a new heating system with heating oil if you find a way to have only 20 kilograms of CO2 for quadrat meter in a year. And every 5 years, this will be 5 kilogram less. And the effect is you have to make an insulation of your building to have only 20 kilogram. That in this moment, other heating systems are much more interesting than heating oil, because your house will be modern and prepared for modern heating systems. So surely only less houses will take this idea to replace a heating oil system with another heating oil system. They will change. But the law, he knows that biogas is okay. He knows that there is a mountain climate correction. So if you live very high, it's clear that the snow will lay longer, and you have to have other numbers that here at Lugano, where I'm living, but the law is just taking in consideration this change. Okay, so now I will give you here the idea of all these fees, all these costs of the new CO2 law. Schematic. So we have the heating. This is this house that will give money in a fund. Afterwards, I will talk about the airplanes, the aircraft that will give money in a fund. Okay, and the industry also has to pay for using CO2, and this fund will be used for 2 different things. First, a big part will be given back to the population, to the people. Each one of us, each one who lives in Switzerland and is Swiss, becomes nowadays 87 francs each year. And this is paid back with the health insurance, because in Switzerland, the health insurance is not facultative. That's the opposite of facultative. You have to do that. And so each one pays the health insurance, each one. And so it's very easy to give back money, because we have a deal with the health insurance that their fee will be exactly a liter than it should be. And everybody, Adriana and me, myself, we can check that on the bill, and we will see that we have to pay each month 7 francs and 25 less, because we are getting back money from this fund. And this is the principle. So the people becomes a back, but also the job, excuse me, the employer, the one that gives the job to the employee.
Yeah, employer.
Okay, so a part is directly to the people, another part is for the employer with this pension. So when you do not work anymore at 65 years, so that also not only the people, but also the employer can have some help from that. Why this system? Why this system? Why do we not keep all the money? This has a psychological idea that when I behave in a way that I'm using less fossil fuels, I will receive a big thank you to myself. And the more I do, the more is the difference. So when I pay in only 20 francs a year and I get back almost 90, so somebody, the system is saying thank you for what you're doing. And this was an important thing just to accelerate new behavior. That's the one thing. The other thing, this is the yellow arrow. This is a third of the fees of the house, of the heating oil, and the half of the fees of flying people will go just in other projects to help the energy transition. And how does this function? For example, 450 million francs a year are given when you are reducing CO2 in the building. So insulation, replacement of the heating system, this all costs. And if I am a house owner, I will receive a great help when I will change my heating system. So the costs are less. So also this money will be given back to the people, but not just everyone the same amount, but for people that are doing something for the energy transition. So that's the idea of these fees. And I talked about the air traffic. What it's new that 30 of 100 until 120 francs each time you take the airplane, you have to pay in this climate fund. And this in Switzerland did not exist until now. And also if you have private flights, so your private jet, so you have to pay 500 until 3,000 francs per flight. It depends how big is this airplane, and in the 30 to 120 francs, it depends how far you will fly, and if you do it first class, where there are not that many places, or if you do it economy class, so there are just then different amounts. Okay, that's almost all for the fees. And what is this law also bringing us? Well, the fleet of the cars will consume less fossil fuels, because there is this aim that all importers of cars in Switzerland, nobody is building cars, we are importing cars, but the that's the average of all the consumption of these cars has to reduce with time. And for the very first time, also trucks have to reduce their consumption. They were not in the actual law. Okay, and this is a very important stuff, the fuel offsetting obligation. What does this mean? It means the large corporation like Shell, like BP, like Swiss Oil, that are importing CO2, diesel, for example, they have to compensate 90% of this. So they have to compensate that. And what happens when a large corporation has to do something else that they did until now? And if this something else costs something more than until now, well, they will make the client pay the new costs. And that this law was had a very interesting solution. And it says that the price of diesel for the cars the fuel, it cannot be raised more than 12 cents per liter. So this is a protection that who owns a car, he will not to have paid 2 or 3 francs only because these big companies, these large corporations have to doing compensation. They have to do that with their money. They took a lot of money in the last 10, 20, 30 years. They have the money and they have to find innovative solutions, how to compensate now the CO2 they are yet importing. And they are not allowed just to make us clients paying for this extra effort. So this is limited to 12 cents, and it's a super thing for all owner of cars. But the opposites, who is taking the referendum, the people who are against this law are using this argument in a wrong manner and saying diesel and fuel will raise 12 cents per liter. We have to say no to this law, but it will not raise. It is the maximum that the companies can make us pay for their task to reduce CO2. I don't know if I made myself clear, because this is a very, very tricky task, and we cannot explain this when we are talking about this law. It's too complicated, and for the opposition, it's very, very easy to say we don't want this law because otherwise they will raise the fuel price for 12 cents per liter. They will not. Just today, with the actual law, you can raise it from 5 cents per liter. So these big companies could, if they would, raise from 5 cents per liter for compensation. They have to do some compensation yet. But they raised it only for 1.5 cents. Clear, they don't want to raise their price too much. So the 2 cents is only the limit. They have the right to raise, but they never will do it if they don't have to. Okay, that's this point. Let's jump out here and say, are there some questions to reading this CO2 Act?
Well, Daniel, I saw on your question, if it was clearly explained, I saw a couple of thumbs up. So just to give you the feedback. There is one question here. Do you see a time when we will have water problems due to the change of climate? Absolutely,
yes. I'm not a meteorologist, so my opinion is not scientific, but based on science. But surely, if 3 and 5 degrees less than today meant 100 meters of ice in Switzerland above us, I think that 1, 2, or 3 degrees more will mean that for years maybe it will not rain in Switzerland, or in Italy, or in South Europe, or then when it rains, it's like the monsoon in India. So yes, we can have a lot of water problems, too much or or missing water.
I think something there to be added is also the problems from the glaciers. How do you say glaciers in English? Glaciers. Thank you. Glaciers. Yeah, exactly. When the glaciers go, which are the main source of water in Switzerland, then that will also be a huge problem, I think, for humans, so and for many ecosystems. So the second question is, for a homeowner, if they want to replace the oil heat with a more environmentally friendly solution, it costs approximately 40,000 francs. Does the subsidy increase under the new law? Currently, it is a small amount, 10%.
No, it will not. It will be about this 10%. But be aware that in Switzerland, when you make plus value to your house, that means a house with a heating oil is worth like this. A house with a new renewable energy heating system is worth more. So the house was 600,000 francs. afterwards, this 40,000 francs, it will be 40,000 francs more worth. And the bank will give you this difference. And we are paying, when the bank is giving us money for a house, we have to pay the bank only 1% of this amount. So these are 400 francs a year. So these are 35 francs a month. That it costs me to have 40,000 francs more more debt on the bank.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Also, just a short comment from Jack regarding water. Yeah. The opposite also occurs. We will get exactly 1 month worth of rain in 1 to 2 days. So yeah, good. So please go ahead.
Okay, so let's finish that that CO2 law. Just this was exactly how much will this costs also for normal people. Let me say that that in average, maybe it can happen that it costs 100 francs for each family. That's what our council, federal council, has is saying. Maybe this is wrong, and maybe these are 200s, but this is for a family of 4 heads. So maybe if everything is not working, that let's say I need a car, and this car has to be an off-roader. It has to be an off-roader, but because I am in the mountain and I have to fly 2 times a year with my family, with all the family. So in this moment, maybe I have to pay 200 or 300 francs as family more a year. And then you ask this family, okay, how many costs is Netflix? And is your handy 40 or 50 francs or 50 francs a month? Nobody knows. And so the difference is, you can say maybe 4 or 5 francs a month for each people. So we do not see any issue herein, because if you just change maybe your car, so you have the possibility also to change a little bit your behavior. In that case, you will not pay anything more. It's very easy to change your behavior and not paying nothing more. And if somebody says, but I do not want to pay nothing more than today, and I do not want to change any behavior, so I think, thank you. You did not get it, that we are looking for a climate catastrophe to avoid. We are not here just to distribute 250 billions of francs that I won in lottery. No, we have a big issue, and we find a cool way to make this happen without big costs, but changing the system. So going in 30 years in the direction of fossil-free or netto zero. Okay. After 53,000 kilometers, just today, a new car, a new Hyundai Kona, will cost less than the other, because it costs 33,000 francs. And a similar car with fossil fuel, the Skoda Octavia, costs 29,000 francs. Okay, and after 53,000 kilometers, the cost of the fuel will be, the break even is reached, and then the electric car will cost less. It's clear, electric car are not the same as the fuel car, but I'm just saying that things are changing. A computer, this was 4,000 francs when my father bought it. Now it's 300, and it's a laptop. So things are changing, and until you can keep your car, but you have to buy another car when this car will be broken. So that's just an information, and maybe also for flying, the green part are people that will become more money back than they pay, and these are 90%. 90% of the people in Switzerland will get directly money from from 10% that are using the airplanes in an absolutely intensive way. Okay, that's also because we think that this law is social. So I have 2 or 3 minutes left for the economy innovation questions, but maybe there are questions now for the social question.
Yes, there are some questions, Danny, but also being wary of the time. Because we still have to do the closing, there is something that I would really like to abort now, and is the fact that although many expats have not the right to vote on this law, it does not mean that you cannot make an impact, and you cannot make a very important impact just by talking to others, to people who can vote, to people with the right to vote and the Swiss passport. And on why this is so important, I think tonight you have given us many facts and statements that could definitely help during a conversation with people. And I think that is indeed very relevant. We will be sharing with you through an email a list of facts that will help you in a conversation, maybe, as I say, with your family, with your colleagues at work, with your neighbors, so that we can get as many people as possible on the boat in this coming election. And actually related to that, there is a question in the chat. What is WWF's pulse check on the uptake of the new law? What we think, like, what are the chances for winning, Danny?
Well, I think in that case, maybe it was 1-2 slides of the economy. I think we can let them go, and I will thank you for attention. And we just jump in this topic. Is this okay for everybody?
I think that would be wise. Huh? We don't have much time left. Yeah.
Okay.
So the question was, what's the pulse on the coming election?
Mm-hmm. So we always do a sondage, so a survey, what people would say. And this the last survey came out with about 62-63% yeses and 38-40 no's. But all the laws, when you make this survey, you have more yeses than when they end, because people say, oh yes, why not, that's a cool idea. And more you are looking exactly at the law, more each person can find just one topic that she does not agree. That's also the tactic. If you want a no, you will make a lot of discussions, because maybe you are, well, why not? Well, let us make the marriage only for 5 years. After 5 years, a marriage has to be renewed. Okay, well, why not? Cool idea. Why not? We could do that. And then when you jump in the details, or the values, or it's too complicated, or the administration. So you give the possibility of each one of us to find a reason for a no, just one. So the other 5 things were okay, but this one I do not want. So I say no because that. So in this surveys, always we start with a big yes. If we can take the yes home, it's not clear at all. So it will be very hard, because Corona and people are in a moment where they do not know economy, where they are going, and they're only hearing that the heating oil will increase the price, and for fuels, fossil fuels for the car, there will be an increasing of the price. So this makes the no increasing now.
Okay, thanks, Danny. There are a couple of more questions. Can older buildings get funding from the government to upgrade their heating system? And are electrical cars really a solution to against climate change?
Against climate change, electric cars are a solution. But maybe for biodiversity and the other problems just correlated with all the batteries that are used. So yeah, there are issues with the electric car, but for climate change, yes, it's a solution. In Switzerland, they calculated exactly how much we have to increase the electric energy we have now if each car in the next 20 years, each car will be electric, each car. And this is only 20% more electricity than we have today. So people imagine maybe we have to have 10 times that much electricity, but it's only 10 times. And this we can do with photovoltaic, etc., etc. But I think that electric cars will be like will be one part of how to move around with cars. So we have maybe different phones, we have different systems. How to when I'm thirsty, I can drink water, I can drink lemonade, I can drink other things. So I think electric cars will be a solution for maybe the second car. I do not know. Maybe there will be another technology, hydrogen driven cars. So it will be a mix, I think. Like almost it has not to be one technique for all, but maybe for precise use, a precise or the best solution.
Danny, there is one last question, and then I think we have to wrap up. So maybe keep it short. Can an older building get funding from the government to upgrade their heating system?
Yeah, almost only older buildings. So I'm living in an older building. Yeah, if you change the windows and the old windows, the heating was passing the windows, you get funding to change the window of the old building. Sure. There are different funding helps. One is just for make more modern, or the other is just to replace fossil fuels. And you can get it also if you say I have not the idea or the money to change the older building in a modern building with insulation of 20 centimeters out there. If you cannot do that, but you do other intelligent, cool things like replacing the heating system, so you will get funding also for the old house.
Right. Risking being a couple of minutes late, and because I find this question super relevant, and with it, then we will wrap up, is what is the most powerful argument against this law, and how can we answer it?
The most powerful is also the fuel. The fuel. We will have to pay that, and people who earns who the income is not high, these are the people that will suffer the most. And so I think there are two answers to that. The first is these people are not in the target of the people who will not have netto something back. These people who has a very low income are not the people who are going 3 times with the airplane, who has the off-roader or 2 off-roaders. And these people have also the idea how they can adapt their behavior. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it was my explanation that the fossil fuel will not increase of 12 cents a liter, but this law will prevent that this fossil fuel will be more expensive, because the big companies, they have to reduce, they have to compensate this CO2, they have to. Otherwise, we cannot go to zero. And if they do so, this law will help that they have not the right just to put everything on you, that you are driving a car with fossil fuel. Okay. I think that's the most important thing. And the third, maybe, and last thing, when climate catastrophe scenarios will come in Switzerland, this can be that water is missing, or we have too much water, or we have refugees that are just coming in. It will always be the people with very, very low income that will suffer first. But this suffering will be very, very brutal when apples will cost 3 times what they cost today, because it's difficult to import them because the climate change over the world is acting. So nobody will change that. They will cost much more. So this program is not just to paying zero, it is to preventing a situation where you cannot live anymore, and that will hurt the first people with low income. Maybe that.
Thank you very much, Dani. And to everyone, there is the link. Pia just posted the link for more such tips on also how to respond to confrontation. I would like to also tell you, we are as international volunteers acting on the CO2 law. If you want to participate in the campaign, maybe by putting out there some flyers or some postcards and stuff like that, please register in this link. And the time in which we will be needing your help is from May 18th to June 13th. Thank you very much, Dani, for your presentation. Super interesting, very helpful.
You're welcome.
And insightful.
I posted the picture of my house. I'm sure you will post the link where you can order material to say yes. You can order material. This is no cost for you. And I took all this and I put it around my house. I think that's one thing that everybody can do, expat or not, Swiss or not.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Yes, we will send out the link within the email. So there is Dani's email. If you need to ask him something urgent on this topic, surely he will be kind enough to give a couple of more answers. Your feedback is super important for us. Please make sure you let us know what your opinion on this webinar. There is a QR code and also the link. Thank you very much for everyone who helped organizing. David, who unfortunately couldn't be there today with us. Pia, Coralie, and Melanie, thank you very much for all the hard work, and also to Stevie, Jana, Angela for helping with the translation of the documents. So you can find us on social media. There are our links. We are active in Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and in YouTube. You will be able to find also this presentation. And last but not least, we will be having a very interesting talk also to the CEO of WWF Friday the 20th of this month, and he will give us an insight on what is what are the results, if so to say, of the pandemic in environmental, social, financial, and political in Switzerland. And there will be also a cleanup day around Switzerland in Zug, in Zurich, and in Basel. You can find more details on this on Meetup. Thank you, everyone, very much. Sorry for the delay. Thanks really for participating with your interesting questions and with your attention. Thank you, Dani, again. And to everyone, a lovely evening.